All right, welcome back to another 2021 MLB Draft Team Preview. We're running through the AL West this week, and next up is the Texas Rangers. Joe, we were talking offline. They had an interesting draft in 2020, one that I think in the aftermath, the days, weeks preceding the draft, people kind of knocked it a little bit. We didn't really know a whole lot about Evan Carter. I think Justin Foscue was somewhat divisive within draft sort of expert camps, where there were some folks that really liked the pick, some folks that didn't dislike the player but thought it was too early. Looking back now, a year later, it might be one of the better 5-round groups that we saw in 2020. Evan Carter has shown to be a really strong prospect in his own right. I think that if we had gone back and redrafted the 2020 draft, there's probably a really good chance that Evan Carter goes in the first round. Justin Foscue has shown the ability to hit. I think he's injured right now, but we know that he can catch a velocity. There's certainly some developing power there, even more so than what we probably saw at Mississippi State, and really good approach and bat to ball skills. I think he's a good hitter. As I mentioned off air, I think he'd be a 55 hit, 55, 60 power type guy. So even if it's at second base, that plays. They have a lot of depth within the infield with guys like Josh Young, Davis Wenzel, the aforementioned Foscue. They have some outfielders as well, and guys like Carter and Bubba Thompson. They're talented and maybe a few years away, but still, this is a team that's not looking to compete within the next couple of years. They're building up a deeper organization at this moment. What direction do we feel like they go in 2021? I feel like there's a bunch of different options potentially.
Yeah, I mean, there really is. And when you have the second pick in the draft, in a draft that is so fully loaded with 6 or 7 guys at the top, all of whom you can make a very good case for Texas, I think it makes for a really intriguing number 2 pick. And I think going back on what you said, I think Texas has an unfair stereotype around them that they don't know how to draft. They've really kind of kicked ass over the last few years. I mean, Cole Winn, it's taken some time, but he's a high school pitcher. It's supposed to take some time. Josh Young was going to debut in, arguably April for Texas, which is pretty unheard of for a 2019, college bat. And then, like you said, we both like Justin Foscue. I loved the Dylan McLean pick in the 4th round of last year's draft. They've really kind of put together a pretty good system. And, if Justin Foscue ends up being what Nick Solak has been, that's a darn good pick in the middle of the first round. Which direction they go this year? Okay, so I would say their system, more than any system, arguably, could use some pitching. Cole Winn is a dynamite play. I mean, he's been one of the best pitchers in minor league baseball this year. Hans Crouse, it's been really a roller coaster ride. We don't exactly know what we're going to have with Hans Crouse. So they could use Jack Leiter. The thing about Jack Leiter is, does he fit the Texas Ranger mold of arm? And how do they feel about him? I mean, do they think they can take his game to another level? I'm not sure. Here's what we do know, Jeff. We do know that the Rangers brass have been out hard on Khalil Watson games. They've been at several of them, and we're talking guys at the top. They've spent a lot of time at Jordan Lawler games, and they've spent a ton of time at Marcelo Meyer games. So reading the tea leaves, I really think they're going to go with a prep shortstop. I don't know which one they're going to go with, but I don't think you should cross any of them off the list. If you're asking for my gut right now, I think they go with Marcelo Meyer if he's on the board. And then I think number 2 would actually be Khalil Watson, even though Jordan Lawler is in their backyard. What do you think? Where do you think that they could go with that first pick in the draft?
If they obviously, as we said, they can go in any particular direction. If I'm in that seat, if I'm in the GM's chair, I'm the draft director, and I'm making the call, and Leiter is there, I think I'd take him 10 times out of 10. We saw what he could do in, his regional start for Vanderbilt, sitting, 93 to 97, touching 99 on the fastball with that really good shape. The secondary stuff looked pretty crisp. When he's on, I think he's probably the best player in the draft. Frankly,
Agreed.
The great fastball. He's got a professionalism and sort of a fight and bulldog mentality in the mound. He doesn't necessarily bark a whole lot, but you can feel the passion, you can feel the competitiveness, and he's cool, calm, and collected. Even after he maybe gives those games where he was getting hit a little bit, he came right back out and attacked the next batter. He's not scared off of pitching inside or putting it over the plate and challenging hitters and making them do something. So, I still would sit, in the camp that, if Mayer, Davis, whoever goes number one, it's not Jack Leiter. If I'm in the Rangers, I take the easy money that's getting dropped in my lap, and I take Jack Leiter. I certainly think they could go after one of the prep shortstops, but I will say they're in a premium position to get one of those players in that upper echelon of this draft that we've talked about before. There's a tight group at the top, and they're going to be able to pick, sort of the creme de la creme between one of the top two picks, of course. So I would personally go Leiter, but I don't think they can go wrong with Watson. I don't think they could go wrong with Mayer, and they couldn't go wrong with Lawler as well. I think there's a lot of good options there for him. And even if, they go off the board, we haven't heard anything around this, any dope, any smoke, but even if they went Henry Davis at 2, I think they're all really strong picks, and the Rangers are, I guess, a bit lucky that they're picking number 2 as opposed to 12, 13, 14, 15. Joe, Seattle Mariners fan, you can attest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're inside that top 8, it's just kind of a put your hands in your pockets and see what happens and take who's available, because any of those top 7 or 8 picks, you can walk away from the draft going, hey, this was a win. This is a good player added to our organization. Jeff, what do you think? A big shout out to Chris Dunn for doing some research and developing these graphics for us. 5 years in a row, the Texas Rangers under slot or below slot their first round pick. That is probably ever present if you're selecting number 2 overall and you don't have a competitive balance pick at any point. I'm not sure if you can get Leiter under slot. He seems like a guy that's pretty set in his ways. Seems like he's going to chase some cash. We've got a mock coming out this week. If you see this, we'll link it in the bio. Khalil Watson really kind of screams under slot at number 2. If you had the pick and Leiter was a guy that's wanting full money, full bore, and you could pick specifically between Lawler, Meyer, and Watson, I'll even throw in House. Out of those 4, who do you think best fits the Texas Rangers?
Wow. I would say that it's probably Watson at this moment. He has a ton of buzz as we're heading into the draft. But I don't think Lawler is all that far behind. Local kid, really cerebral player. When we spoke with him, he was able to recall random pitches and sequences within at-bats that happened months in the past, which is rare to see someone that's able to do that. I think there's maybe a few more hit tool questions with Lawler versus Watson. But it'll be interesting to see, because Lawler's obviously high school season was much further along than Watson's was, who got us a late start there in North Carolina. So I'm interested to see how that all sort of shakes out. But ultimately, I don't think they can go wrong with either, but I would probably lean Watson a little bit here, just for sort of recency bias's sake.
Agreed. Well, I think if we're just projecting out, I would think in the second round, Texas probably goes with some sort of high school star, high school pitcher, high school middle infielder. It's kind of the way they do things. They save a little money at the top. They go for value in the second and third round. So maybe look for guys like Colson Montgomery, Maxwell Muncy, Thatcher Hurd, maybe Jackson Baumeister, some of those types of names at the top of the second round. But that's going to do it for Texas. And this almost brings an end to the AL West. We've got one more for you tomorrow. We'll jump into the Anaheim Angels.